Guilty as Sin might be one of, if not the wittiest, best song Taylor Swift has ever written. And today, I'm going to talk about it line by line and show you how incredibly fucking genius it is. Before I go on, shout out to my incredible genius girlfriend who honestly did most of this analysis, and I'm just relaying it to you guys. So you have her to thank for that. Okay, before we dive into the first verse, there are so many layers to this song, right? On the surface, it's a song about longing for someone and a lot of religious imagery, religious guilt, themes of sinning, that kind of thing. Then, just a little bit deeper than that, you realize that there are a lot of double entendres in the song and that it's explicit or suggestive in that way. But what if I told you that those double entendres have even a deeper potential significance where they also all could be biblical references or references to resurrection? Like that kind of imagery and reference is literally riddled throughout this entire song. So we're starting off with Drowning in the Blue Nile, He Sent Me Downtown Lights. I hadn't heard it in a while. And on the surface, these really specific references seem to point to the rat that I shall not name. And that's intentional, right? Because remember, this album is full of very, very surface level red herrings that are aiding her in proving the point that she eventually will make. It's actually funny because the surface level reading of Drowning in the Blue Nile is for that to be a metaphor, but the deeper meaning is that that's actually a direct literal reference because it actually references the death and resurrection of Osiris, and that anyone who drowns in the river becomes holy by association. If you analyze the lyrics of Downtown Lights, it also like thematically very similar to this song. It's a song about longing, there's no gendered pronouns. It really fits in with the vibe. My boredom's bone deep could potentially be a biblical reference, but it's kind of a reach. So for the sake of time, I'm going to skip over that one. This cage was once just fine. I mean, it seems pretty obvious what she's referring to there. She's talking about the cage of heteronormativity and closeting that has kept her confined for so long. That used to be okay, but it no longer is. She's dying in there. Am I allowed to cry? Is really interesting to me, and I'm going to get back to that, potentially having another double meaning later on. I dream of cracking locks, throwing my life to the wolves, or the ocean rocks kind of definitely have double meanings here. One, throwing my life to the wolves or the ocean rocks seems to clearly potentially be a self unaliving reference. But at the same time, the cracking locks right before that makes us think of the implications of her coming out. And the phrase, when you throw someone to the wolves, it usually means you're sacrificing them for the greater benefit of another person or group of people. So then the question becomes, who would benefit from that kind of sacrifice? And an obvious answer is if she did come out and throw her public life to the wolves, that would be sacrificing her huge pop stardom for the greater good of society and normalizing queerness. Now, here's where it starts to get really fucking interesting. So, after I pointed out to my girlfriend that the bridge of Guilty as Sin was like one of the queerest things she's ever written and like undeniably gay, and that it addresses the you muse and not the he him muse, she thought of something that completely changed my perspective on this whole song, which was, what if the he in this song refers to God himself? And we keep getting continued references in the song to either her resurrecting after killing her public persona or her just self unaliving, like crashing into him tonight after throwing my life to the ocean rocks is a reference to self unaliving, IMO. Like, she could be meeting God tonight. I mean, the next line, he's a paradox, fits with God so clearly. Google God paradox, and like, you'll be reading for hours. I'm seeing visions. Am I bad or mad or wise? This is another insane reference, And it sort of reveals that she might be explicitly taking the place of Jesus in this song, where she's also speaking to God. So she's like placing herself in the position as a child of God, which makes a lot of sense with the themes of this song. When she says, "Am I bad or mad or wise?" she is directly invoking a very popular argument for the divinity of Jesus that was first posited by C.S. Lewis, who definitely has a lot of thematic connections to TTBD, and it's called Lewis's trilemma. And it's basically the idea that because there's so much proof that Jesus of Nazareth was a real person, either his claim about being the Son of God was false and he's bad for lying to everyone, he's mad because he actually believes he's the Son of God, but he's not, or he actually is the Son of God, which in her case, she is comparing to being wise. And then this part, which actually started my girlfriend down this whole rabbit hole of a theory that turned out to be fucking genius. What if he's written mine on my upper thigh only in my mind? So she first asked me if the bridge of the song is queer, then what's the Gaylor interpretation of this line? And I said to her, well, I'm not sure if there's a official interpretation yet, but it's the idea that what if her restrictions of belonging to a man are only in her head and she can break out of that? So my girlfriend searched for religious references to having a name written on an upper thigh, and she actually found something. Revelation 19:16, it says, "On his robe and on his thigh he has this name written," and it's referring to Jesus. It also says the book of Revelation is filled with symbolism, and this description in particular is symbolic. He hasn't actually written his name there. It's just symbolic. It's a metaphor. So if the line, "What if he's written mine on my upper thigh only in my mind," is a reference to this, it could be taken to mean, what if I'm only a Christian because I was raised that way, because it was instilled in me, and it's only in my head, and I don't actually believe that, or want to believe that, or want to partake in that. Then the rest of that verse goes, "One slip and falling back into the hedge maze, oh, what a way to die." When I heard this line for the first time, I immediately connected it with Labyrinth, because that's a hedge maze. But this also can potentially reference Christianity. These particular kind of hedge mazes symbolized martyrdom, which led to heaven, perseverance, secrecy, skill, and architecture. Basically, like the journey into the center of the maze represented like your journey with Christianity and toward resurrection. Then she says, "I keep recalling things we never did, messy top lip kiss, how I long for our trysts." Then she's talking about the Sapphic muse, right? The thoughts that are impure, or that she's reckoning with as being impure, or are they? This part, she came up with something so good for this. Check it out. I also came up with an alternative interpretation to this, and both of our interpretations have biblical significance. So, like, it's just such a loaded song. This is what she found. "Noli me tangere, touch me not," is the Latin version of a phrase spoken, according to John 20:17, by Jesus to Mary Magdalene when she recognized him after his resurrection. It's basically like the idea of having faith, and that once resurrection is accomplished, the link between human beings must no longer be physical, but must be a bond of heart to heart. "Blessed are those who have not yet seen and yet have believed." So you believe him without having to physically touch him. You believe that he is the Son of God and has resurrected without physical, tangible proof of that. So, like, in this interpretation, she would be saying, I had faith, I had blind faith, I believed in this faith, and I'm still guilty for just wanting to be who I want to be, or who I am. And that feels unfair. It's like, I've been a good Christian and had faith in God. How is this fair to punish me for just being who I am? "I keep these longings locked in lowercase inside a vault. Someone told me there's no such thing as bad thoughts, only your actions talk." Now, the second half of this, from here to the bottom, resonates pretty clearly as like that thing that Christians say about acting on your homosexual impulses, that it's not a sin unless you act on them. You're allowed to have those thoughts, just as long as you don't act on them, you're good. The first half of that, I keep these longings locked in lowercase inside a vault. A lot of people have connected to, potentially Reputation, Taylor's version Vault Tracks, which also might be karma, but there's also a potential deeper double meaning here too. So my girlfriend's idea was that the lowercase could be a reference to capitonyms, which apparently is she would know this, which apparently is a specific word used to describe capitalizing pronouns specifically in a religious context. So like capitalizing he for God, which notably, obviously, this song doesn't do, but like that would make it really obvious she was talking about God if she is talking about God. Obviously, this is just an interpretation. And that her longings are locked away in lowercase because they are distinctly unchristian. Like they're not capitalized in the way that capitonyms are capitalized because they are holy. They're in lowercase because they are unholy, according to Christians. These fatal fantasies giving way to labored breath, taking all of me, we've already done it in my head. On the surface, there's some double entendres here and like references to spicy stuff, right? But consider her fatal fantasies could also be earlier, remember, when her fatal fantasies were either about self-unaliving or discarding her public persona and like being free of that, shedding the pop star persona. In that context, I think this verse could actually absolutely be about that. Fatal fantasies because, she's part of her's dying and gonna be resurrected. Labored breath, like she's nervous. She could be like hyperventilating or panicking about it. Taking all of me, all of her public persona, we've already done it in my head because she dreams of cracking locks. And the we could absolutely be about her and her public persona, finally coming together. If it's make believe, why does it feel like a vow will both uphold somehow? If it's all in my head, these longings, if it's not real, why does it always keep coming back to my mind? Why can I never be free of it? Why do I feel like this will always haunt me? And it's inevitable. Okay, then we go back to the chorus. What if he's written mine on my upper thigh, only in my mind? One slip and falling back into the hedge maze. Oh, what a way to die. My bed sheets are ablaze. I've screamed his name. If he is God, that's funny. Building up like waves, crashing over my grave, without ever touching his skin, how can I be guilty of sin? This is what my girlfriend said her reading of all of that is. One, what if I'm only a Christian because I think I am? Subtext, because it was instilled in me as a child. I was brainwashed into it. Next line, something goes wrong and I lean back into good Christian girl mode, or I think I'm getting out of Christianity and I fall back into it. 3 to 6, question mark, question mark, question mark. But I think that 3 to 6 could be about like her burning it all down and whatnot. She did make the connection to the wildest dream, Eras Torset, where the bed is on fire. Without ever touching his skin, how can I be guilty of sin? Jesus, touch me not. 8, I believed in Jesus' message, and yet I'm still a sinner. Now, the bridge, the best part of the song. What if I roll the stone away? They're gonna crucify me anyway. So obviously a clear reference to resurrection, Jesus reference. They're gonna crucify me anyway, whether or not I roll the stone away, so I may as well do it, is the implication. So something incredible that my girlfriend pointed out about the what if I roll the stone away line, that like it's has even deeper of a significance is, so in the story of Jesus's resurrection, an angel came down and like rolled the stone away so that everyone could see inside the tomb, but Jesus had already made it outside the tomb before the stone was rolled away because, magical God powers, and he resurrected. So he was already outside the tomb. The stone was rolled away not so that the Lord could emerge, but to demonstrate that he'd already done so. So that line is not simply about revealing something, it's about proving something that has already been public. Gagged. Best part of the song, what if the way you hold me is actually what's holy? Extremely notable, probably the most important time she has ever used you when she's been saying he the whole song. You should be paying fucking attention to this. Why is it you now? We know why, right? She is saying that this is her religion now, that she has accepted queerness as her religion, whereas previously it has just been a false god to her that she still worshipped. She has finally accepted that her queerness is holy. It's not a false god. There's nothing wrong with it. There's nothing false about it. And she further hammers that point home with the end of the bridge where she says, I choose you and me religiously because this is now her religion. She's come full circle in this song about religious trauma. Okay, last verse, we'll finish it off. He sent me Downtown Lights. I hadn't heard it in a while. And there's a musical interlude that is the exact same amount of beats as the beginning of the song, but with some of the lyrics removed. My boredom's bone deep. This cage was once just fine. Those lines are gone, implying that she, at the end of the song, after she replaces her religion with her queerness as her new religion, she's no longer bored and she's no longer caged. Am I allowed to cry? Now, I said we would come back to this, and I keep my promises. Okay, so she says, one of the most famous biblical quotes, Jesus wept, is in the Gospel of John and happens immediately before he resurrects Lazarus. So if she's making a direct connection between the crying and the resurrection, then she could be essentially asking for permission to resurrect herself, aka to come out. Wow, that was probably the longest single song analysis I've ever done. And I hope you enjoyed it, but this song definitely deserved it. So let me know what you think.